There, I'm recording now, I think. Oh, okay, video number 2 for today. I gotta make a second trip. Anyway, Antikantavad, fanaticism, and the argument from life is just a metaphor. Yeah, he's arguing that there's still the same argument as maybe even Professor Anton, a lot of people keep making, that somehow this is all not knowable. It's all beyond our grasp, understanding what's going on here. Still a grand mystery to life. And it's just, and he held up the God delusion to do this, which is really hilarious. A book that basically just spells out how the human species clings to old ideas out of just tradition alone. New facts come and it fights and fights and fights with those facts because it doesn't want to change its story. It wants to retain its comforting notions of what's going on planet Earth. And new facts have tended, especially in the past, to point to a colder world than they want to believe exists. A world of replicating molecule, where the mission statement is carnage, gladiator war, to propagate the existence of a DNA molecule of a special code that built into our psychology and built into the mechanisms of our existence are huge prejudices and bigotries. It's all a tragedy of the vanities, a huge debaucherous monkey fuck kind of disgusting mess. And that truth has sort of been illustrated, okay? We've done all that. Mendel did you're just a bunch of recessive and dominant genes. And Darwin did here's the evidence, the proof that, we came from a long history of the modification of a molecule. And, we're still in the same game. Even though our brain can do better than a tic-tac-toe stupid game, we're still physically built to play that stupid game. And there's no better game to play, unfortunately. Even with all our king's brains and king's horse brains and whatever brains we can throw together, we still glorify the silliest of things. We admire beauty in people rather than intelligence, hard-earned. We glorify silly clownery. You fall down. If I can fall down the right way here, I can get 1 million views, which is just screams of where the human psychology and mentality is. And yet these people will mock, in a sense, anyone who dares to point out that simple truth, that the human race has used its brain as a toilet, has toileted in their own cranium with silly, idiotic notions, and they've done it for silly, trivial, dumb, ignorant reasons. It's ignorance that drives mankind into that little poo-poo corner. little can't control have to wear a diaper. They're so incapable of dealing with anything called responsibility to the facts or the truth. It's just it's such a mockery, this defense of the idea of mystery, or the defense of this idea that the human race has got some sort of stoic bone in its body and has any courage whatsoever as it runs constantly from glaring truths just name a subject, and you can see the global warming, whatever. You can see them just try to weasel their way out of the reality. Even the subject of population and replication, they don't even want to deal with that one rationally. They just make up some kind of nonsense like, well, you could sustain 10 billion people or 50 billion people. They just have to eat just a little tiny bit and not breathe too much. It's just the evasions of reality are numerous, and to qualify the human race as something other than preposterously delusional in much of its history, in much of its silly ambitions, its trivial glories. Look at it, it bowed to kings, it still kisses the hands of popes, and yet you're going to mock science, in a sense, mock anything else that stands up and says, wait a minute, you're listening to the wrong guys. Are you going to call anybody who stands up the same as those guys? You make no distinction. You're somebody making an argument from the facts, an argument from the biology, an argument from the physics and the chemistry. That kind of mathematically precise argument in the same category with some moolah or some poop, and say they're nothing but the same because they are saying something's true, and you don't have to believe anything's true, and you can know like us that nothing's true, and that life is a metaphor. My boots, the snow, it's metaphoring. There's nothing real. I mean, it's just, for what? For what cause does these people do this? Does he mock the obvious passage of time and growing of knowledge? Why does he resist and defend those who run from the truth being revealed? There's an agenda. There's got to be one. He leaves it ambiguous and uncertain. He plays with Buddha talk and Hinduism and Eastern bibble babble, but he says nothing explicitly. But if something's there, you don't advocate for don't worry, be happy, unless you somehow need people to be unworried, unless you need people to defend or to join your crowd or some such thing. You can't certainly, well, I suppose he could honestly believe, I suppose, that human beings are doing just perfectly fine, and we should just keep grinding them up and using them badly across the world, and consuming the animals, and somehow there's some sort of purpose accomplished in that suffering. I mean, that seems, Dawkins should have another word beyond delusional for such a perception, for such a bizarre rendition, metaphor, story, narrative for what's going on planet Earth. It's all some sort of free ride kind of premise, and it's just like how. But this is the same guy who says it doesn't need to justify itself, that nature somehow doesn't have to serve, it doesn't have to be defended against the accusation that it is ignorant, or that it is dysfunctional. Because what? We don't have something worse to compare it to? Because that's all there ever could be. It's just levels of dysfunction. Because yes, you can't come into this universe functional. And I suppose that's a subject I really should work on. because it's the kind of the key to this whole thing, is understanding that in a vacuum, in a nothing, there is nothing you can create that could satisfy a need, because the need doesn't exist yet. Nothing has created the need by having a welfare state, by being negatively impacted by the non-existence. And this is a curious mechanism of the universe, that it doesn't have any intrinsic way to rub its belly. It has no belly in need of rubbing. It has no human mechanism, no human trigger of comfort. Again, it's one of the few words, I suppose, that the human race got right when it came up with the word comfort as a joy word, as a good word, as a thing to pursue and obtain, because comfort is what we're always after, just a kind of comfort. The negative has to come first. The discomfort has to be created, or the potential threat of it has to be created for there to be some purpose in creating the better state. This is the quandary, the fundamental flaw in the universal system, is this fact that you must create the negative potential first before you can have the spark of electricity. There's no ballet, there's no beauty, there's no anything without the threat of the existence of the ugly, the damaged, the degraded, the negative. And there's a quandary. There's a huge problem in the mechanism of the very nature itself. Is that, I guess you could compare it to temperature and heat. And that's all a matter of the absence or the existence of that potential. And clearly, this kind of entity, this thing of negative, is the energy, is the mechanism of value. That you can only make value out of negative potential. That in the non-existence of it is in fact the bliss, especially when contained in the theater of a mind, because a brain is a special kind of perceptual tool or mechanical tool that gives a reality to that negative and positive, and realizing that there's no intrinsic positive, there's just the relieving of the negative, and it rewards, it creates a mechanism of reward. And so it's just like I don't feel the burdens of gravity or the air pressure or even my age. At every moment of my life, these things are all create a tension and a burden that is capable of being relieved. And when it is relieved, when the thorn is pulled, I am granted the bliss of that relief. It's like the thorn goes in slow, little by little, and we are aggravated and agitated and irritated, but in this little increments. And then when it's relieved, we are surprised at how burdened we were. That kind of thing, anyway. But yeah, we're just operating. Another key thing is this word desire and addiction. Desire. We live on it. We feed on it. We consume it. It is the entire function. And it deserves some cynicism. It deserves some criticism. It is, a completely subjectively defined thing. It's an absolute truth of our existence, but it's subjectively and erroneously in most cases, or biologically in most cases even, described for us. You will desire the hot chick, you will desire the food of calorie value, you will desire the comfort of a well-made pair of shoes, or whatever the thing will be. And then the rest of it gets into this whole ego thing of how do I define myself. And we define ourselves, again, from the negative. We don't want to be the outcast, the nerd, the B model or the C model. We want to be the A alpha model. We want to be the master of our world, the master of the less endowed, the less powerful, the weaker. And this again is another source of our of relieving the burden of our weakness and our small dickishness and our, we are putrid beings, but we fill ourselves with this glory by comparing ourselves to the lesser. We don't make comparisons to something better because it can't exist in many ways. And so we take the easy road and just find something less good and say, therefore, I'm good enough because I'm better than that. And that's not good enough. And it's certainly not good enough in the acquisition of a philosophy. You don't choose a philosophy and say it's grand because it's not preposterously ludicrous. And so many atheists have done that. They found religion to be a laughably incoherent fable in the context of current knowledge. And yet they still retain a laughably vacant, undefined, superficial perception of reality. They are just as delusional in their ignorance as the wrong theory. The wrong theory was wrong because it was wrong. Their theory is wrong because it's vacuous. It doesn't say anything that a 5-year-old couldn't observe. Nature says so. That's not a philosophy. That's running away from the responsibilities of thinking. That's copping out, saying tradition knows. We'll just keep doing as they've done. Just do as the Borg DNA tells you. Keep playing the traditional game. Sorry, that isn't philosophy. That is fail as psychology, and it's fail as a definition of reality or a prescription for how to live as a brain-endowed human being. It's a grotesque insult to intelligence, as I stated. So I'll take these boots off because they're not cleaning up. Anyway, till next time. And such. And so forth.